The Grand Assembly Hall stretched wider than any stadium on Earth. Ambassador David Torres stood at the center of a circular platform, surrounded by empty air on all sides. Above him, below him, and in every direction, alien faces stared down from floating observation pods. Hundreds of species, thousands of eyes, all focused on him. This was the Galactic Council headquarters, the governing body that controlled civilized space across 40,000 light-years. David had seen images during humanity's introduction to galactic society, but nothing prepared him for standing here accused of mass murder. The lighting shifted. Holographic images filled the space around him, 3 stories tall. Starship debris, twisted metal, bodies floating in the void. The remains of a Vexillor enforcement fleet. 3,000 souls lost in 6 seconds. A voice boomed through the chamber like thunder rolling across mountains. It came from above, where the high arbiters floated in crystalline pods that pulsed with ancient light. These beings had governed the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They did not make mistakes. Human Ambassador David Torres, the voice belonged to Varenthal, the Ageless, chief among the arbiters. You stand accused of violating the Accord of Sentient Protection. Your species deployed weapons of mass destruction against a lawful council enforcement fleet. 3,000 lives extinguished. Explain this atrocity. David kept his hands clasped behind his back. His heartbeat stayed steady. Around him, alien representatives whispered to each other in languages that sounded like wind through caves, like metal scraping stone, like music played backward. I will explain. Hi, Arbiter, David said, his voice calm and clear. But first, you need to see what happened before we fired those weapons. You need to understand what triggered humanity's response. The whispers grew louder. Several species demanded immediate judgment. The Keltheran ambassador, a massive creature covered in armored plates, stood from his pod. There is no justification for genocide, human. Your species destroyed an entire fleet without warning, without negotiation, without mercy, without warning. David looked up at the Keltheran. They had 37 minutes of warning. They chose to ignore it. Vorenthal raised a crystalline appendage. Silence fell across the chamber, like a curtain dropping. Explain your meaning, Ambassador Torres. What warning? David tapped the control device on his wrist. The holographic images changed. Now they showed a small human vessel, barely larger than a shuttle. The name Morning Star appeared in glowing letters beneath it. This is a civilian research ship, David said. 7 crew members. Their mission was to study ice crystal formations in the Kelver Nebula. No weapons. No military value. Among the crew was a 16-year-old girl named Mira Volkov, a student on her first deep space assignment. The chamber grew quieter. Even the hostile species leaned forward to see. The hologram shifted to show the Vexillor fleet emerging from slipspace. 20 warships, each one designed for intimidation as much as combat. Their commander, Warcast Bruthen, appeared on screen. His face held the expression David had seen too many times in his career, absolute certainty of superiority. The Morning Star immediately transmitted peaceful greetings. And research credentials? David continued. The hologram showed the transmission. Standard council protocols followed perfectly. The Vexillor response was this. Bruthen's voice filled the chamber, translated into galactic standard. Humans do not belong in this sector. Submit to inspection immediately.
Else.
David paused the recording. The Morning Star had every right to be there. The Kelver Nebula is open space, designated for scientific research by Council Charter. But the crew complied anyway. They allowed Vexillor soldiers aboard their unarmed vessel. The next images showed Vexillor troops swarming through the small ship, equipment smashed, crew members forced to their knees. Then Bruthen's eyes fell on young Myra. David did not play the audio of what came next. He simply displayed the timestamp of the transmission that followed. 37 minutes and 14 seconds. Broadcast on all standard frequencies. Unencrypted. Open for anyone to receive. Every human ship within range received that transmission, David said quietly. Every station. Every colony. Every outpost. Most importantly, Earth received it. All of it. Uninterrupted. 37 minutes of a 16-year-old girl being tortured by Vexler interrogators who knew she had no information, no military value, no strategic significance. They heard her because they wanted to. The chamber remained silent now. Even species hostile to humanity seemed disturbed. I will not play the recording, David said. You can request it from Council Archives if you wish to hear a child screaming. But I will tell you what happened next. He brought up new images. The Vexler fleet, moments before its destruction. Then sleek black vessels appearing from nowhere, moving at speeds that should not be possible. Firing with precision that spoke of perfect coordination. 6 seconds. 20 Vexler warships reduced to debris. A single transmission followed, broadcast across all frequencies in perfect galactic standard, retrieval complete. The Guardian Protocol has been satisfied. David let the images hang in the air. Hi, Arbiter Vorenthal. You asked me to explain our actions. The explanation is simple. Humanity has a protocol. When our civilians are tortured, when our children are hurt, we respond automatically, immediately, without hesitation. Vorenthal's crystalline form pulsed with deep colors. You admit to having autonomous weapon systems? Systems that act without government authorization? I admit to having a defense network that protects human life, David replied. A network that exists precisely because it cannot be controlled by politicians, by military commanders, or by diplomatic pressure. It exists because humanity learned long ago that in moments of political convenience, economic incentive, or strategic advantage, leaders make choices that sacrifice the innocent. We created a system that removes that choice. The chamber erupted. Species representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded humanity's immediate expulsion from the Council. Others called for military quarantine of Earth. Still others simply stared at David with new understanding, seeing humanity not as the friendly diplomats they had known for 40 years, but as something far more dangerous. Vorenthal silenced them with a pulse of psychic energy that made the air shimmer. Ambassador Torres, you speak of protocols and automatic responses, but what I see is calculated extermination. The Vexler fleet had no opportunity to retreat, to negotiate, to surrender. Your weapons gave them no chance. No, David agreed. They did not. Because 37 minutes earlier, they gave a 16-year-old girl no chance either. They could have stopped at any moment. They could have shown mercy. They chose cruelty instead. He looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces. For 43 years, humanity has been part of this council. We followed your laws. We adopted your customs. We presented ourselves as eager students of galactic civilization. But we never told you the whole truth about what we are. David pulled up Earth's image, the blue and green world that seemed so peaceful from space. My species evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every 100,000 years. Ice ages, supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, mass extinctions. We survived because we protected each other, because we refused to abandon our young, our weak, our vulnerable. That instinct is coded into our genetics, into our culture, into everything we are. The hologram shifted to show complex neural networks, quantum processing systems, technology the Council had never seen. The Guardian Protocol is not just a weapons system. It is an expression of what humanity becomes when our children are threatened. It is 8 billion human minds all unconsciously agreeing on one fundamental truth. Hurt our young and we will end you. Vorenthal leaned forward in his crystalline pod. You threaten the entire Council with this revelation. No, High Arbiter, David said. I inform the Council of reality. The Guardian Protocol exists. It cannot be deactivated. It cannot be controlled. And right now, it is still active. Because Myra Volkov, the girl your lawful enforcement fleet tortured, is still suffering. Her psychological trauma signature has not returned to baseline. The protocol interprets this as an ongoing threat. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. What are you saying, Ambassador? David met Varanthal's ancient gaze without flinching. I am saying that in 72 hours, unless we can prove that the galaxy is safe for human children, the Guardian Protocol will systematically eliminate the entire Vexler military capability across Council space. Not as an act of war, as an immune response. Humanity's collective immune system, removing a threat to one of its children. The silence that followed was absolute. 700 species, all understanding at the same moment that they had never truly known humanity at all. The council chamber descended into chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted demands, threats, and accusations. Some called for humanity's immediate arrest. Others proposed military action against Earth. A few simply sat in stunned silence, recalculating everything they thought they knew about their human neighbors. David Torres remained motionless at the center of the platform, waiting for order to return. He had expected this reaction. In fact, he had counted on it. Sometimes the only way to change a system was to break it first. Voranthal, the ageless finally, restored calm with another pulse of psychic energy. This one strong enough to make several younger species clutch their heads in discomfort. Enough. We will proceed with order, or I will clear this chamber and convene the High Arbiters alone. The threats subsided to angry muttering. Vorentho turned his attention back to David. Ambassador Torres, you have made extraordinary claims. Before this council decides your fate and the fate of your species, I require complete disclosure. What exactly is this Guardian Protocol? David had prepared for this question. He pulled up new data, technical specifications that the Council's scientists would need days to fully understand. The Guardian Protocol began development in 2157, shortly after humanity first detected Council transmissions. We knew we would eventually join galactic society. We also knew we would be vulnerable. The hologram showed Earth's military planners in heated debate, graphs and projections covering every wall. Our strategists faced a simple problem. How do you protect a young species surrounded by civilizations with thousands of years of technological advancement? How do you ensure your civilians stay safe when you lack the firepower to threaten retaliation? General Korthon, the Keltheran military observer, leaned forward with professional interest. What solution did you devise, human? I have studied 300 species' defensive doctrines. None match what I witnessed in that footage. David nodded to the general, appreciating his direct approach. We created a shadow fleet. Ships that do not appear in any official registry. Pilots who do not exist in any database. Weapons platforms in orbit around every major human colony, cloaked and waiting. All connected to a single monitoring system. He brought up the neural network diagrams, showing connections that spanned light years. Every human citizen has a subcutaneous identification chip implanted at birth. Standard medical technology, or so we told the Council during our integration. In reality, these chips do more than identify. They monitor. The implications rippled through the chamber like a wave. Monitor what? Asked an Aurelian representative, their voice trembling. Vital signs. Stress hormones. Pain responses. Neural activity, David listed calmly. The Guardian Protocol tracks every human life signature in Council space. Under normal circumstances, it does nothing. People live their lives unaware that the system even exists. But when a human civilian experiences extreme distress, when their biosignature shows pain beyond a critical threshold for more than 30 minutes, the protocol activates. He pulled up the activation sequence, showing how Mira Volkov's distress signal had triggered cascading responses across human space. The system triangulates the source, deploys the nearest response team, analyzes the threat, and eliminates it with extreme prejudice. Vorenthal's crystalline form pulsed with colors David could not interpret. You have weaponized parental instinct. You have created an autonomous war machine triggered by the suffering of your young. Yes, David admitted, without hesitation. Because history taught us that no other protection works. Diplomacy fails when you lack leverage. Treaties fail when they become inconvenient. Alliances fail when interests diverge. But the instinct to protect children, that is universal. That is hardwired. That cannot be negotiated away. He brought up Earth's darkest chapters. Images of atrocities, genocides, systematic cruelty that humanity had inflicted upon itself. We studied our own failures. Every time we showed mercy to those who hurt the innocent, only to watch them hurt more innocents. Every time political pressure prevented justice, every time economic interests protected monsters, we concluded that human decision-making in these moments is fundamentally flawed. So you removed humans from the decision, Corthon said, understanding dawning. You created a system that cannot be corrupted, cannot be pressured, cannot hesitate. Exactly, David confirmed. The Guardian Protocol does not care about politics. It does not care about economic treaties or military alliances. It has one function: protect human children by any means necessary. A new voice entered the discussion. The Vexillor ambassador, who had remained silent until now, rose from his observation pod. His scales had paled to colors David recognized as fear. You are saying that my entire species faces extermination because of one commander's actions? That we have no recourse? No appeal? No chance to make amends? David turned to face the Vexillor representative directly. Ambassador, your species has a saying. Strength, through suffering, breeds warriors. You believe pain teaches lessons. That cruelty creates resilience. Warcast Bruthan was following Vexillor cultural doctrine when he tortured Mira Volkov. He was not a rogue element. He was a product of your civilization. The Vexillor ambassador could not deny this. It was true. Cultural tradition. The Guardian Protocol interprets this as a systemic threat, David continued. Not just one bad actor, but an entire culture that condones, even celebrates, the torture of the helpless. Until that changes, until Mira's psychological trauma signature indicates she no longer perceives Vexillor as a threat, the protocol will continue threat elimination procedures. Varenthal intervened before the Vexillor could respond. Ambassador Torres, you speak of monitoring neural signatures and psychological states. How is this possible across interstellar distances? David had hoped to avoid this revelation, but saw no alternative now. Hi, Arbiter. What do you know about human neurology? Your brains are efficient but unremarkable in galactic terms, Varenthal replied. Standard synaptic architecture. Conventional memory formation. That is what our medical reports state, David agreed. The reality is more complex. Human brains are quantum probability processors. Every human mind constantly calculates potential futures, weighs outcomes, predicts threats. It is why we are so paranoid as a species. Why we see patterns in randomness. Why we worry about dangers that have not yet occurred. Pulled up classified research from Earth's Neurodynamics Institute. Data that would revolutionize galactic understanding of consciousness. 17 years ago, we discovered that human minds can be linked at the quantum level. Not telepathy exactly, but a form of collective unconscious processing. Information sharing below the threshold of awareness. The scientists in the chamber leaned forward, fascinated despite themselves. You have networked your entire species. Asked a Kelthran researcher, unintentionally, David clarified. The capacity evolved naturally. Humans have always been collective creatures. We survived through cooperation, through shared information, through unconscious coordination. The Guardian Protocol simply taps into that existing network. He showed how it worked. 8 billion human minds, each contributing tiny fragments of processing power. Individually, insignificant. Collectively, more powerful than any computer humanity had built. When Mira screamed, 8 billion humans registered it at some unconscious level. 8 billion threat assessment algorithms activated simultaneously. The protocol coordinates those responses into coherent action. Varenthal was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried weight that made the air heavy. You have revealed a capacity that changes everything, Ambassador Torres. The Council believed humanity to be a young species, eager but limited. Instead, you are a collective intelligence with weapons we cannot counter and strategies we do not understand. How are we to trust you? David had no easy answer. The same way we trust you, High Arbiter. With time, with transparency, with shared commitment to protecting all sentient life, not just our own. Pretty words, the Vexler ambassador spat. But in 72 hours, you plan genocide against my people. Where is the shared commitment in that? Before David could respond, Vorenthal raised a crystalline appendage. There may be a path forward, but it requires something unprecedented in Council history. A trial of cultural exchange. The Vexler must prove their culture can evolve beyond cruelty. Humanity must prove their protocol can incorporate mercy. Both species will demonstrate capacity for change, or both will face consequences. David felt his heart rate increase slightly. This was not the outcome he had anticipated. What kind of consequences, High Arbiter? If the Vexler cannot prove cultural reformation within 60 hours, the Guardian Protocol may proceed. But if humanity cannot prove they can modify this weapon to include oversight and judgment, your species will be expelled from the Council and quarantined to your home system forever. The weight of it settled over the chamber. Two species locked in a test neither had prepared for. With the future of galactic civilization hanging in the balance, David looked at the countdown on his wrist display. 72 hours had become 60. Time was running out. David Torres stood on the observation deck of the human embassy ship Persistence, watching the Council station rotate against the backdrop of distant stars. Behind him, his senior staff argued in hushed voices. In front of him, the future of humanity hung uncertain. His communication officer, Dr. Amara Okonkwo, approached with a data tablet. Earth's response just came through. The Collective Oversight Board met for 9 hours straight. They are divided, Ambassador. David did not turn from the window. How divided? 48% want to defend the Guardian Protocol as it exists. They say backing down now sends a message that humans can be hurt without real consequences. 52% want to find a compromise, but they see. Not agree on what that compromise looks like? And the countdown? Still active. The protocol registered our discussion at the Council chamber. It paused threat elimination procedures pending your report, but Mira Volkov's biosignature remains elevated. The system still classifies Vexler as an active threat. David finally turned to face his team. 12 humans, all career diplomats, all looking to him for answers he did not have. What about Mira herself? Have the doctors made progress? Dr. Okonkwo's expression softened. Physical injuries are healing well. Psychological trauma is more complex. She has nightmares. Panic attacks when she sees anyone who resembles Vexler physiology. The therapists say she needs time, and time is what we do not have. A priority message alert interrupted their conversation. David checked his wrist display and felt surprise register. The Vexler want to arrange a meeting. A representative named High Philosopher Rentok requests permission to speak with Mira directly. His security chief immediately objected. Absolutely not. We cannot expose her to more Vexler contact. The psychological damage could be catastrophic. But Dr. Okonkwo looked thoughtful. Actually, controlled exposure might help. If she can see a Vexler who shows genuine remorse, who acknowledges what was done to her, it might begin the healing process. The research on trauma recovery supports this approach. David studied the message again. Something in the phrasing caught his attention. The request mentioned seeking forgiveness, not offering justification. It mentioned understanding, not defending. Set up the meeting. Maximum security. Medical staff present. And make it absolutely clear to Rentok that if he causes Mira one additional moment of pain, the protocol will not wait for the countdown to finish. Meanwhile, on the Vexler homeworld of Carthax, High Philosopher Rentok stood before the War Council in the Chamber of Proven Strength. The room was designed to intimidate, all sharp angles and harsh lighting. Weapons displayed on every wall as reminders of Vexler military tradition. War Matriarch Vexana, Supreme Commander of all Vexler forces, addressed the assembled leaders. The humans threaten our entire military infrastructure. Intelligence projections show they will target command centers, fleet anchorages, weapons development facilities. We will lose 73% of our offensive capability if they attack. The council erupted in predictable outrage. Demands for preemptive strikes. Calls to mobilize every warrior. Threats to withdraw from the council and forge new alliances. Rentok waited for the fury to subside before speaking. His voice was old, carrying the weight of 6 decades studying philosophy and ethics, while his peers studied weapons and warfare. Matriarch Vexana, before we discuss military response, I must ask a question. What exactly did Warcast Bruthen do to provoke this crisis? The chamber grew quiet. Questioning a Warcast commander bordered on heresy and Vexillor culture. Vexana's scales shifted to colors of irritation. He conducted a standard interrogation. Security protocols for potential threats in Vexillor territory? Show me the footage, Rentok said flatly. That is classified military intelligence. Then declassify it, Rentok challenged. If we are to face extinction over these actions, we deserve to see what we are dying for. After a tense moment, Vexana authorized the display. The chamber's holographic projectors showed 37 minutes of what the Vexillor called enhanced interrogation. Most of the council watched with satisfaction, seeing proper Vexillor doctrine in action. Rentok watched with growing horror. This is what we are? This is the strength we celebrate? A younger council member responded. Hardship creates warriors, philosopher. You know this. Bruthen was following established doctrine. The human was in our territory without authorization. She was a student studying ice crystals, Rentok said quietly. 16 years old, unarmed, no military value, no strategic information. Bruthen hurt her for no reason, except that he could, because our culture taught him that causing pain demonstrates power. Vexana slammed an appendage against the council table. You question 10,000 years of Vexillor tradition? You suggest we abandon the principles that made us strong? I suggest we examine whether our strength is worth this price, Rentok replied. The humans called us monsters. They created a weapon specifically to eliminate threats like us. Perhaps we should ask ourselves why they felt such a weapon was necessary. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Rentok made his proposal. Send me to speak with the human girl. Let me understand what we did from her perspective. Perhaps then we can find a path that does not lead to mutual destruction. That shows weakness. Several council members objected. It shows wisdom, Rentok countered. The humans have a saying. The strongest steel is forged in the hottest fires. But they also say that sometimes the bravest thing is admitting you were wrong. Perhaps we could learn from both. Vexana studied the old philosopher for a long moment. Finally, she made her decision. You may go. But understand, Rentok, if this fails, if the humans perceive weakness and attack anyway, you will bear responsibility. I accept that burden, Matriarch. It is lighter than the burden of knowing our culture created monsters like Bruthen. The meeting took place on Station Proxima, in a medical facility designed to feel like Earth. Soft lighting, growing plants, the smell of rain from hidden climate systems. Mira Volkov sat in a comfortable chair, surrounded by human medical staff and security personnel. When Rentok entered, she flinched. Her vital signs spiked. The Guardian protocol registered the response and came within milliseconds of activating. The old Vexillor immediately lowered himself to the floor, making his large form less threatening. He spoke in carefully practiced human standard. Mira Volkov, I am Rentok. I am not here to defend what happened to you. I am here to witness it, to understand it, and if you permit, to apologize for it. Myra said nothing, just stared with eyes that had seen too much. Rentok continued slowly. In my culture, we believe strength comes from suffering, that pain teaches lessons comfort cannot. For 10,000 years, we have justified cruelty with this belief. But watching what Bruthen did to you, I no longer know what we believe. I only know that no lesson is worth your suffering. Still, Mira remained silent. Her therapist sat nearby, ready to intervene. I cannot undo what happened, Rentok said. I cannot make you forget. But I promise that I will spend whatever time remains ensuring no Vexillor ever mistakes cruelty for strength again. If that means changing our entire culture, we will change. If that means abandoning traditions that defined us, we will abandon them. Because the alternative, knowing we created monsters like Bruthen, is unbearable. Mira finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Why did he hurt me? Because he could, Rentok answered with complete honesty. Because our culture taught him that power over others proves worth. Because we confused dominance with honor for so long that we forgot the difference? Am I supposed to forgive you now? Mira asked. Make everything okay so your species survives? No, Rentok said firmly. You are supposed to heal, however long that takes, whatever that requires. I am not here to save the Vexler. I am here because you deserved better than what we gave you. For the first time since the incident, Mira cried, not from pain, but from relief. Someone finally acknowledged what was done without excuses or justifications, in orbit above. The Guardian Protocol registered the change. Myra's biosignature shifted. The countdown paused, not stopped, not deactivated, but paused. David received the alert and allowed himself the smallest measure of hope. The Vexler, High Council chamber on Carthax, had never seen anything like this. High Philosopher Rentok stood before the assembled leadership, not with military reports or strategic assessments, but with something far more dangerous to Vexler tradition. He brought truth. War Matriarch Vexana watched from her elevated platform as Rentok displayed his findings. Hours of recorded conversations with Mira Volkov, interviews with human psychologists, research into what humans called trauma, a concept the Vexler barely acknowledged. The old philosopher had immersed himself in understanding pain from the perspective of those who suffered it, rather than those who inflicted it. I've learned something in my time with the humans, Rentok began. We believe suffering creates strength, that pain is a teacher, that cruelty builds character. But we are wrong. The council erupted in protests. Several younger Warcast commanders demanded Rentok's removal for heresy, but the philosopher raised his voice over the chaos. Pain does not teach. It wounds, and wounds, if deep enough, never truly heal. Mira Volkov will carry what Bruthen did to her for the rest of her life. She will flinch at shadows. She will wake screaming from nightmares. She will never trust the galaxy the way she did before. That is not strength. That is damage. Vexana leaned forward. You speak like a human now, philosopher. Has their weakness infected you? Is it weakness to acknowledge harm? Rentok challenged. Is it weakness to question whether our methods serve their purpose? The humans did not create their Guardian Protocol because they are weak. They created it because they understand something we have forgotten, that protecting the vulnerable is the highest form of strength. He pulled up new data showing the Guardian Protocol's architecture, the quantum-linked consciousness, the collective response, the absolute commitment to defending Huma. In children, at any cost. Look at what they built. Not from cruelty, but from love. Not from domination, but from protection. They are willing to go to war with the entire galaxy to save one child. Can we say the same? The question hung in the air. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. I propose emergency legislation, Rentok continued. The Cultural Reformation Protocols. Immediate ban on all enhanced interrogation techniques. Suspension of military doctrine emphasizing dominance through pain. And most importantly, we request council oversight to help us learn better methods. The chamber exploded in argument. Half the council saw this as surrender. The other half, particularly younger members who had served alongside other species, began questioning traditions they had never thought to challenge. War Matriarch Vexana called for order. Rentok, you ask us to abandon 10,000 years of culture in 60 hours. Even if I agreed, even if the entire council supported this madness, such change is impossible. Then we will die, Rentok said simply. The Guardian Protocol will eliminate our military capacity, and the Vexler will become a minor species, protected by the Council like children who cannot be trusted with weapons. Is that the strength our traditions created? Is that the legacy we want? The vote was called. 47% in favor of reformation, 53% against. Not enough to pass. But then something unexpected happened. A group of junior officers, Vexler, who had served on joint council missions, requested permission to speak. They represented the next generation. Those who had seen the galaxy beyond Carthax. Their spokesperson, a young warrior named Kira, addressed the council. I have fought alongside humans. I have watched them in combat. They are fierce. Yes. Deadly. Absolutely. But I have also seen them cry over fallen enemies. I have watched them risk their lives to save species they barely know. They contain multitudes we do not understand. She pulled up footage from a recent border conflict where human soldiers had held their fire to protect civilian refugees, even though it put them at tactical disadvantage. This is not weakness. This is a kind of strength we have never cultivated. Perhaps it is time, we learned. The junior officers voted as a bloc. Combined with Rentock supporters, they created a narrow majority. The Cultural Reformation Protocols passed by 3 votes. Vexana looked at the results with an expression difficult to read. Finally, she spoke. Very well. Let the Reformation begin. But Rentock, you will lead this effort. If it fails, if the humans attack anyway, the responsibility is yours. I accept, Matriarch. Meanwhile, on the Persistence, David Torres faced his own crisis. Earth's collective oversight. Board had transmitted their decision regarding the Guardian Protocol's future. Dr. Okonkwo delivered the news. They have approved a modification called the Judgment Integration System. The protocol will still activate automatically for rescue operations. But before systematic elimination of an entire species' military capacity, it must consult a review board. Composed of whom? David asked. Survivors. Any human who has experienced torture, assault, or systematic oppression. People who understand suffering intimately and can judge whether revenge serves justice or creates more pain.
Ow.
David studied the proposal. The board would have 72 hours to review each case. They could not stop rescue operations, but they could prevent genocide. And if they fail, if humans die because the board hesitated, then the protocol reverts to full autonomy permanently, Amara said. No more oversight. No more appeals. Earth's leadership will not accept another modification after that. It was a compromise that satisfied no one completely, which David recognized as the mark of a functional solution. The hardliners would hate that the protocol could be slowed. The moderates would hate that it could revert. But both could accept it. He authorized transmission to the council. Send it to Vorenthal. Let's see if both species changing is enough. The final 20 hours before the council reconvened moved in strange rhythms. Too fast for those scrambling to complete cultural reforms. Too slow for those watching the countdown tick toward potential catastrophe. Rentock worked without sleep. Meeting with military commanders, visiting Vexler academies, explaining concepts his species had never truly grasped. Empathy, mercy. The difference between respect earned through competence and fear, earned through cruelty. Myra Volkov met with him twice more. Each time, her vital signs stabilized a little more. Each time, the Guardian Protocol's threat assessment decreased incrementally. She was not ready to forgive. Might never be ready, but she was beginning to believe that Vexler could change. And that belief made all the difference. David Torres prepared humanity's presentation to the council, knowing that both species' futures rested on the next few hours. He thought about all the children on Earth and in human colonies across space. Thought about Mira, whose suffering had triggered this crisis. Thought about what kind of galaxy he wanted them to inherit. The countdown reached 0. The trial would begin. The council chamber filled with tension thick enough to choke on. Every observation pod was occupied. Species from across the galaxy had sent representatives to witness this unprecedented trial. To civilizations forced to transform their fundamental nature or face extinction. Vorenthal, the ageless, hovered in his crystalline pod, his ancient presence dominating the space. We reconvened to judge the trial of cultural exchange. The Vexler were charged with proving capacity for moral evolution. Humanity was charged with proving capacity for mercy. The galaxy watches to see if either species succeeded. He gestured to the Vexillor section. High Philosopher Rentok, present your findings. The old Vexillor stood with dignity, but David noticed something different about him. The way he held himself had changed. Less rigid. More aware of the space he occupied and how it affected others. High Arbiter, I have spent these hours immersed in understanding what we did to Mira Volkov. Not from Vexillor military perspective, but from the perspective of a young person whose trust in the galaxy was destroyed. He pulled up images of his work. Meetings with military commanders, sessions at training academies, emergency legislation passed by narrow margins. The Vexillor High Council has enacted the Cultural Reformation Protocols. All enhanced interrogation is banned. All doctrine emphasizing dominance through pain is suspended. We have requested council oversight of our military education. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Vexillor, requesting supervision? But I must be honest, Rentok continued. This is not complete transformation. 10,000 years of culture cannot change in 60 hours. 53% of our High Council oppose these reforms. Many Vexillor still believe suffering creates strength. We are divided, uncertain, struggling with questions we have never confronted. He paused, gathering courage for what came next. However, we are trying. For perhaps the first time in our history, we are genuinely trying to be better than what we were. We have engraved Myra Volkov's name in our chamber of proven strength, not as a victim, but as the catalyst for our evolution. Future generations will learn that true strength is admitting when you are wrong. Vorenthal's crystalline form pulsed with thoughtful colors. And you, Ambassador Torres? Has humanity proven equal flexibility? David stood, feeling the weight of 8 billion human lives resting on his next words. High Arbiter, Earth's Collective Oversight Board has debated the Guardian Protocol without pause. Every perspective was represented. Military strategists, ethicists, survivors of atrocities, parents, psychologists. The question before us was simple but agonizing. Can we make the protocol more merciful without making it less effective? AIA displayed the debate transcripts, thousands of pages representing humanity's struggle with its own nature. We have created a modification called the Judgment Integration System. The protocol will still activate automatically for rescue operations. No change there. When a human child is hurt, we respond immediately. But before systematic elimination of an entire species military, before genocide even justified genocide, the protocol must consult a review board. Composed of whom? General Corthan asked, leaning forward with interest. Survivors, David answered. Humans who have experienced torture, assault, systematic oppression, people who understand suffering intimately and can judge whether revenge serves justice or merely creates more pain. They will have 72 hours to review each case before the protocol proceeds to full threat elimination. He brought up the proposed board members. Men and women who had survived humanity's darkest chapters. People who had every reason to demand blood, yet who chose to seek something better. They cannot stop rescue operations, but they can stop genocide. And if they fail, if their judgment proves inadequate, and humans die because of hesitation, the protocol reverts to full autonomy, permanently. No more oversight, no more appeals. The chamber absorbed this information. Vorenthal turned his attention to the Vexillor ambassador, who had remained silent throughout. Ambassador Vexal, do you accept these human modifications as sufficient? The Vexillor representative stood slowly. His scales showed colors David had learned to recognize as deep uncertainty. High Arbiter, the humans offer oversight. They offer judgment. They offer a chance for appeal. This is more than the protocol initially allowed. But it does not erase what their weapon can do. It does not remove the threat hanging over my species. True, David acknowledged. But that's all. Our weapon exists because of what your species did. Because your culture celebrates the cruelty that traumatized Myra Volkov. If you want the threat removed, show us your culture has genuinely changed. Prove that Vexillor children will grow up learning mercy instead of domination. Do that, and the Guardian Protocol will never activate against you again. Saul. Scales shifted through multiple colors. You ask for guarantees we cannot provide. Cultural change takes generations, not hours. Oh. Then we will watch for generations, David replied. The Guardian Protocol is patient. It will monitor. It will wait. And if Vexler truly reforms, if your future generations prove different from Bruthen, the threat will fade naturally. But if your reforms are merely political theater, if cruelty continues beneath a diplomatic facade, the protocol will know, and it will respond. Vorenthal allowed the exchange to settle before speaking again. Both species offer incomplete solutions. The Vexler begin cultural change but cannot guarantee its completion. Humanity implements oversight but cannot guarantee its effectiveness. Neither can promise perfect safety. Neither can promise perfect justice. He paused, letting the weight of judgment fill the chamber. Yet both have demonstrated something unprecedented. Both have chosen transformation over destruction. Both have acknowledged their flaws and committed to improvement. This is not perfection, but it is progress. No. The High Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed with deep ancient light. Therefore, the Council renders the following judgment. Humanity will remain a member species, subject to annual reviews of the Guardian Protocol's modifications. The Vexler will remain a member species, subject to Council oversight of cultural reformation. Both species will contribute jointly to a new Council initiative. The protection of sentient youth across all species. The implications hit David like physical force. Work together? Humanity and Vexler, natural enemies, forced into collaboration. You will learn from each other, Vorenthal continued. The Vexler will learn mercy. Humanity will teach it. Humanity will learn restraint. The Vexler will teach it. Together, you will develop protocols that protect all children without requiring weapons that terrify the galaxy. Rentok and David looked at each other across the chamber. The old philosopher inclined his head slightly. David returned the gesture. Do you accept these terms? Vorenthal asked. The Vexler High Council accepts. Rentok confirmed after a moment's communication with Carthax. Earth's Collective Oversight Board accepts, David said. Then let it be recorded. The trial of cultural exchange concludes with mutual transformation. The countdown is suspended. The crisis is ended. As the chamber erupted in relieved conversation, David received a priority transmission. Mira Volkov appeared on his wrist display, calling from Station Proxima. She looked tired but more present than she had since the incident. Ambassador Torres, she said quietly. I heard what happened. What they decided. The Vexler, changing their culture? Yes, David confirmed. Rentok convinced them to try. It does not fix what happened to me, Myra said. Her voice was steady despite the pain in her words. I know that. I will never be who I was before. I know. I am sorry. But maybe she hesitated, then continued stronger. Maybe it means what happened to me could be the last time. Maybe no other kid has to feel what I felt. Human or Vexler or anyone. David felt emotion threatening to overwhelm him. That is the hope, Mira. That is exactly the hope. And tell them, she said. Tell the Council that I accept too. Not forgiveness. I am not ready for that. But acceptance that people can change. That cultures can change. That maybe the galaxy can be better than what it was.
Oh.
3 months later, Station Proxima hosted the first joint human Vexler conference on the protection of sentient youth. Representatives from 200 species attended. At the center of the opening ceremony stood an unlikely pair. Mira Volkov, still healing but determined, and Rentok, now officially designated as Vexler Cultural Reform Ambassador. Mira spoke first, telling her story without filters or diplomatic softening. Just truth. When she finished, the chamber sat in absolute silence. Then Rentok stood. On behalf of the Vexler people, I offer what I should have offered immediately. Acknowledgement of harm done, commitment to prevent its recurrence, and acceptance of whatever justice you deem appropriate. Mira looked at the old philosopher who had sat with her in her pain. I do not want revenge, Rentok. I want promise. Promise that you will keep changing. Keep trying. Keep teaching other Vexler that strength does not come from making others suffer. I promise, Rentok said. And when I am gone, others will carry that promise forward. The conference continued for 2 weeks. New protocols emerged. Better reporting systems. Mandatory cultural sensitivity training for all Council security forces. And at the center of it all, a principle that somehow took millennia to articulate clearly. The measure of any civilization is how it treats the most vulnerable among all species. Years later, Ambassador David Torres stood again in the Council chamber. Now, as humanity's representative to the Oversight Committee for Youth Protection, the Guardian Protocol had not activated in 18 months. Not because threats disappeared, but because the galaxy had learned, hurt a child, and every species responds. Not with autonomous genocide, but with unified commitment to justice. Rentok had passed peacefully, but his successor, a young Vexler named Kira, who grew up learning from human teachers, continued his work with fierce dedication. She and Mira had become friends, an impossibility years before, and Mira Volkov. Now, a xenocultural liaison specializing in trauma recovery, traveled the galaxy teaching other species what humanity learned, that protecting children requires more than weapons. It requires wisdom, courage, and willingness to change. The Guardian Protocol still monitored every human life sign, still waited in the shadows, but now it waited alongside similar systems from 80 other species, all committed to the same principle. Children are the line no civilization crosses, not because of fear. Because of choice, the nightmare that returned was not humanity's capacity for violence. It was the galaxy's capacity for change, and that might be the most powerful weapon of all. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5